at 11:30. Oh, it just turns into 11:30. So I guess
Yeah.
we'll get started.
Mhm.
I'd like to welcome everyone to Seoul National University Population Research Center's International Symposium today. My name is Bong Lee. I'm a professor of social welfare and also director of the center. And I will be moderating today's international symposium session. The Seoul National University Population Research Center is a virtual center dedicated to in-depth research of population dynamics and their effects on various aspects of society. And as you might all know, South Korea is experiencing a very rapid population change. Currently, it has one of the lowest birth rate in the world, and South Korea is also experiencing very rapid rate of aging, and as you all might know, the population changes has very diverse and significant implications on various aspects of the society, including economy, labor market, population composition, family, politics, and law. And today's international symposium, we actually have a three very exciting, I think, and interesting papers presented. And if you see the topics of today's papers, you can see a sort of diverse range of implications of population changes have. So we have a papers on labor market, automation and augmentation, robots and work. We also have a paper on family and marriage, and also age structure and democracy. So this clearly shows the diverse range of aspects of population changes might have. So, without further ado, let me introduce the first presenter, Wen Lei, a professor of sociology at Harvard University, and her paper is entitled "Automation and Augmentation and Artificial Intelligence, Robots and Work." So, each presenter has about 20 to 25 minutes. And then, if possible, we'll have a very short Q&A session. Okay, so Professor Lei, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor Lee, for the very kind introduction. So today can you see my screen? Sorry. Yes.
We were able to see it, and now it disappeared. So.
Oh, okay, so now it disappeared. Let me share it again.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, that works right now. It's working.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm going to present a paper that's I published with my student Rachel Kim in annual review sociology last year. So I was asked by this journal to review a lot of literature on automation and augmentation, especially the impact of AI and also robots on work. And this area is very interdisciplinary. So basically, we reviewed literature in economics, sociology, also management and human AI interaction. So So for those of you who know, who are familiar with the history of work, you might not find the excitement and also concern about AI or robot something new because this has been a topic that has been discussed since for a long time. And then in the US and the UK, there were a lot of debates in the 60s regarding the consequences of automation. And in fact, if you look at the history of like the future of work, this area began to emerge around 1970, and it never become outdated. So that's the kind of very safe area of study because we always have new a future of work. And this time, a lot of scholars, a lot of, and the public are very excited about the so-called industrial 4.0. So that's some kind of like new form of robotic that incorporates real-time analytics and also of course AI. So that's some kind of general purpose technology similar to internet. And then what's new this time in this new wave of technology change is the impact of technology on white collar worker, especially professional class. So when scholars talk about automation and augmentation, so when they use the term automation, they try to actually refer to using human to replace specific tasks, using machine to replace specific human tasks, and also like economists also talk about augmentation. That means that enabling, empower human workers by using technology. And so there are two aspects, replacing and also enabling. But these two processes are not really mutually exclusive because automation of some tasks can lead to labor augmentation elsewhere. So I want to briefly talk about like three like two themes. So first is technology, labor, and productivity. So based on some empirical analysis, and then the second theme is so the first theme operates at a more macro level, aggregate level. I summarize a lot of literature in economics, and then the second theme focuses on technology at work that's more operates more at organizational level and look at the development and also the employment of technology at work at organizational level. And the third, and then I will end with talking about some suggestions for future research. So like labor economists have studied have been conducting a lot of study on the impact of technology, especially industrial robots on wage and employment. And in the beginning, they focus more on skill, like because sometimes they in early days, so scholars think low skill job could be easily replaced by machine. But then there is a shift from skill to task because skill couldn't explain some patterns of occupational like automation pattern. So and then basically the argument is that machine can have some kind of displacement effects, especially regarding routine tests. So tests can be kind of conducted like by step this kind of process, and then a lot of research already show that show this kind of displacement effect, especially a decrease like when people automate a task, then there could be they in many parts of the world scholars show a decrease in labor demand, wages, and employment in specific sectors. And then and it's also the empirical study also showed that some kind of task, especially non-routine task and also low-skill tasks, cannot be easily displaced by technology. But then, even though there are limited displacement effect, that doesn't mean that the quality of job wouldn't be impacted by technological change. And in fact, for a lot of non-routine job that's not be displaced. Like workers actually they are like monitored by like technology because of technological change. So that's displacement effects. And another effects of technological change is called countervailing effect. That means that with the advantage with the advancement of technology, there could be some increased demand for labor, and then what economists have, and also some sociology show that show something called reinstatement. In fact, that means that the emergence of new labor-intensive tasks, for example, when we have more like development in robotics and also AI, there are new jobs that have been created over time. But then it's also very important to see that even though there are new jobs created over time, there are a lot of different kinds of jobs being created. For example, some very low skilled, labor intensive jobs, and like scholar call this ghost work. For example, data labeling, and usually these jobs we have this kind of job in like rural areas or small towns in developing countries, and there are like and also some very good jobs have emerged, but usually that tend to concentrate in larger cities and also in more developed areas in the world. So there is this kind of distribution. um, and then, of course, this kind of technological change, automation, and have implication for economic and social inequality. And then different social groups could have different risks of being displaced or gaining new opportunities. So there could be equality between social groups. But then until now, I think the empirical results research do not really tell us some kind of more consistent patterns of result, especially about AI. And then, but what is clear that there has been increasing inequality between capital and labor because a lot of new technology requires more intensive capital investment. So the proportion of labor of national income has been decreasing over time. So there's increasing inequality between capital and labor in terms of the what they get from the outcome of economic development. And then there has also been increasing inequality among firms because a lot of, like, for example, digital infrastructure, AI, need to have a lot of capital investments, and usually larger firms are situated in a better positions to take advantage from technological changes. But what is surprising is that even though, despite the technological advancements, scholars, economists found something called the paradox of productivity. And in fact, in a lot of in major economies, advanced economies, and some larger developing economies, scholars found that productivity have actually been slowing down over time despite the technological change. And then, like Nobel Prize winner, like Ajumolu, he talked about like this could be caused by something called excessive automation. So sometimes automation doesn't really happen in a socially desirable way, and there are something called social technology. They can displace labor, but then their impact on productivity growth is not really significant. Now I like to talk a little bit about the employment of the development and also use of technology at work. As I mentioned, that this literature focuses more at the organizational level. So we talk about the impact of technology on employment, on wages, but then in addition to this kind of labor market outcomes, technology could also have additional detrimental consequences, like for example, like AI for workers, especially for marginalized groups, and also ordinary citizens. So in a lot of field, for example, like in platform economy, we can see that AI have been used to automate managerial surveillance. So a lot of companies can use this technology to supervise and surveil their employees, like gig workers, more easily. And then certain jobs are more easily to be surveyed. Usually that's kind of more like low skill jobs. But then we also see a pattern of resistance against this kind of increasing automated surveillance. Um, and another consequences of the applications of technology like robots and AI at work is the perpetuation of bias and also social inequality. So in the daily life, a lot of like firms and the governments have been using AI, for example, like facial recognition technology or risk assessment tools in making their decisions to automate the decision making. And then a lot of research, especially in computer science and also human AI interaction, found that a lot of technology developed tend to discriminate or unintentionally bias against specific individual group. For example, facial recognition system tend to have more accuracy when they detect and analyze people with lighter skin and also male. So you can see the consequences of this the application of technology. And also in healthcare systems in the United States, they also find that the risk assessment tool used by hospital to allocate resources are biased against social groups with less uh, economic resources because of the design of the algorithm. So there are a lot of sources of bias. So first is data. So there are a lot, the data, usually the data set didn't really have representation of specific social groups. And then there are also issues with algorithm design. And then the design can actually lead to some kind of feedback loop. So this kind of process lead to a lot of bias when we applied AI at work. And I also want to talk about the limitation of technology like robots and also AI. So a lot of research actually show that like robots, even very advanced robots, have still have very like a lot of difficulty in doing some kind of routine low skill task. So like for example, like I study the automation in a company called Foxconn. That's the producer of a lot of Apple related products. So in the beginning, the company had they wanted to create 1 million of robot to like replace assembling workers in China, but they encounter a lot of difficulty. And then in the process of automation, there has also been the emergence of new tasks that actually requires an increased level of physical or dexterity. So that means you need to have more human. And then and also like robots couldn't really replace a lot of tacit knowledge. And one example is Toyota company. So they actually in recent year in some plants, Toyota actually decided to replace robots with humans because they feel that using humans, using robot undermine the company's ability to accumulate and also reproduce testing knowledge. So, and in a lot of organizations, people also found that bringing into integrating new technology like robots actually, will lead to the increase of different kinds of tasks, and then sometimes the use of robot also lead to some kind of opposition. For example, in Japan, in hospital in Japan, like Korea, they have demographic problem crisis, and then some hospital use humanoid robots, but then a lot of patients were, and also their family feel alienated by the introduction of this kind of humanoid robots. And similarly, a lot of research also show the limitation of AI technology. So still they have problem in terms of solving complex reasoning and also making judgment. And then they couldn't really replace a lot of a combination of physical activity, empathy, and communication task, this kind of task. And an issue, and also a very important issue of about the limitation of AI system is that there are challenges in terms of two-way transfer of tacit knowledge between AI model and organization. So as I mentioned, that organizations have their the employees have their own tacit knowledge, but it's very difficult for the AI system to extract all the tacit knowledge. And on the other hand, AI system also they also have a lot of black box that people couldn't really interpret. So human being couldn't really understand a lot of things actually produced by AI robots. So there are two ways of problems. And then just very similar to the adoption of robots, the adoption of AI also led to a lot of the reconfiguration and also the introduction of additional tasks. And then there are a lot of research in healthcare system, public service, and also different kind of business setting. And one very important development about AI is the possibility that AI could replace professional, because in the past, automation tend to replace like the working class job, but this time a lot of professional job could become obsolete. That's the arguments of certain scholars. But then the results are actually more nuanced. So first, there are different kinds of professions, and some profession they are protected by the professional association. For example, medical doctors and also lawyers, and usually these organizations they actually control how to actually use AI or use different kind of technology in their professions. And then study of radiologists also show very little replacement effects, and radiologists still maintain authority to decide whether and how and when to incorporate AI, and also research on the application of AI in the legal profession also show that I think at this moment still the application of AI kind of concentrates on some kind of peripheral task in the legal process. But there are new areas that need to be considered. For example, the relationship between human expertise and AI power expertise, because not all kinds of professions have authority, have a high level of autonomy or authority. And in some settings, some professionals are required by their organizations or their boss to adopt AI-based assessment. And for example, social workers in the US, so some of these social workers don't really have autonomy to disregard the AI-powered assessments outcome. And then in many situations, the human assessment and the AI assessment contradict. And how to solve this problem is actually quite challenging. And now I think I will just end my talk by talking about some areas that I feel I don't find a lot of research. So now what I have read is usually based on the analysis of aggregated data, like at the macro level, and then or the study of one organization. So there are very few studies that are based on comparative design that study the different outcomes regarding the dangers, the limitation, the benefits of robots and AI. So across organizational setting or across different settings. So I think it's not. I think we will need to have that kind of study to tell us more about the specific conditions or mechanism that contribute to different outcomes, because it's very difficult to say to really come up with a convincing generalizable assertion about the impacts of automation of robots and AI. And another issues I think that could be interesting is at the even higher level. For example, like different countries come up with different policy regarding AI and how that kind of macro level policy and also the politics and for example, like industrial policy can contribute to different outcome. And I think we have a lot of analysis on this kind of policy, but we have fewer empirical study of how this policy actually uh, work in reality. I think I'll just stop here and then questions are welcome.
Well, thank you, Professor Lei. It was very interesting summary of her paper. Uh, I understand Professor Lei has to leave early today, right? So
Yeah,
before she leaves, I'd like to entertain a couple of questions before she
yeah,
leaves, if we can. So now I'd like to introduce today's Q&A panelist, Professor Dong-Kyun Nim, Professor of Sociology at Seoul National University, and Professor Jung-Hwa Ha, Professor of Social Welfare here at Seoul National University. So, if Professor Im or Professor Ha, if you have any questions, you may now ask.
Well, yeah, thank you for your presentation, Professor Lei. It's a very, impressive kind of overview of today's probably, the most important and hottest, topic. And I have a very kind of simple question, which is related to our, the topic of today's
mm,
symposium, which is about population change, fertility change, and aging in society. So, um, can you kind of somehow, you know, square what you have, presented today with
yeah,
overall population change? I think,
mm,
at least in Korea, the two most important, social topics uh, nowadays is first the rise of AI, and second the population change. These are the two most important trends in our society. So maybe it'll be important to examine if there's any kind of relationship between the two. I mean, certainly
mm-hmm,
there, the population decline, especially the aging of society, would
mm,
kind of propel the technologies related to the elderly
mm-hmm,
care and other kinds of,
right,
care related technologies.
mm-hmm,
But maybe there would be, the direction that is coming from the development of AI to the population change and uh, for example lots of mechanisms you have presented today. I think most of them are kind of the forces that widen the inequality and make a more economically polarized society, enhancing the social stratification and so on. And I think that kind of widening inequality will be I don't know. Uh, my prediction is that it will lower the fertility rate.
Mhm.
And so I think that is the most kind of dominant kind of
yeah,
possible causal effect of
right.
the rise of AI on population change. So
Mm.
do you have any like I don't know thoughts on this issue?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for Professor Yin for this really fascinating and so important question. So, as I think as you mentioned that it's very important to understand the impact of I think how the like governments or firms or the general public use technology to solve the some demographic issue, and in fact, a lot of research and it show that the adoption of technology actually aims to address this kind of demographic issue, especially labor shortage in some kind of like aging society. For example, like radiologists are in many society because of aging and also the difficulty in training. And that's why like radiologists are using AI to fasten or to the training process or to solve the labor shortage problem. And as you mentioned that in some like aging society, for example, like Korea and also China and also Japan, a lot of companies and also governments are really trying to use technology like elderly care technology or to solve the issues. But there are really the outcomes vary really across cases. And I think based on my understanding, my reading of research in Korea, seemingly there is a higher level of acceptance of this kind of technology in Korea compared with Japan. And there are scholars who study the adoption of robots in healthcare system in Korea and also in Japan. And I have a student who is a Korean student who are study comparing the application and also the consideration of this kind of elderly care technology in Japan, in Korea, and also in the United States. So I think these are very, very important issues. And then, and on the other hand, you also talk about the possibility of having the technology on increasing inequality. And I think one lessons that I've learned from reading a lot of literature, especially the papers and the book written by the Nobel Prize winner last year, Ajumolu at MIT. So he and his co-author emphasized the importance of institutions. So we should look at not only technology, but then there could be different designs of institutions that could actually shape the effects of technology. And then also, I mean, whether this institution can actually adopt technology but reduce inequality. So, I mean, their research show that in different society there are different institutions, and it's not the case that in every single society that adoption of technology lead to increasing inequality. So there are different cases. And for example, in Germany, the labor union actually they try to solve the concept like more negative consequences of automation on workers. So there could be different kind of institutional arrangements, and I think this kind of institutional design, like policy, could be very important in terms of thinking about how to really take advantage of technology to solve a lot of crises like population issues, but at the same time thinking about how to ameliorate the negative consequences of technology.
Okay, great. Thank you, Professor Lei.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
I also know that it's getting very late in the East
Yeah,
Coast,
thank you.
so
Thank you so much.
we'll let you go. And
Right,
good
thank you
night.
so much. Yeah. Good night. Thank you for
Okay,
including me.
okay.
Bye. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hope to see you again.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
And now we'll turn to the second presentation. Professor Wei-hsin Yu. She's a professor of sociology at University of California, Los Angeles. And she's going to present on changes and persistence of values surrounding marriage, experimental evidence from Japan. So please welcome Professor Yu, and if you're ready, you can begin the presentation. Thank you. And you also have about 25 minutes.
Hi, can everybody see the slides? Everything's good? Okay, great. All right, thank you. Thank you for inviting me here, and thank you for, it's great to have a chance to present among this diverse set of papers. We're talking about population dynamics, and my paper is directly at, I think earlier Professor Yin was saying in Korea, everybody's thinking about decline population shrinking, and my paper is exactly about, very relevant to that. I myself have been studying population dynamics for a while, and I, like many social demographers, you first look at economic conditions, also things that surveys can better capture. But lately, I've been thinking a lot more about the role cultural values play in the whole population changes trends. And so today's talk is part of a larger project where I try to explain marriage and fertility trends in East Asia using various survey experiments in hopefully in various countries. I haven't done all of them yet, so this is the beginning of the project. I have the data on Japan, so I thought I'm going to talk about what we find in Japan. This presentation is with my collaborator from National Taiwan University, Professor Kuo. Okay, so let me, okay. So this is the audience. I don't need to explain why we want to look at marriage decline. Everybody knows in East Asia. Well, marriage decline is really not just an East Asian phenomenon. It's basically we observe a decline in marriage rates and increase in marriage age worldwide. Everybody's talking about, everybody has it. Now, it's particularly consequential though in East Asia because there are still relatively few childbirths outside of marriage. So in Japan, in particular, the front runner of this marriage decline trend, it has the experience without birth, without marriage, there's no birth. And then the result of it ultimately is population shrinking. So Japan has been experiencing population shrinking since 2009. So now it's over a decade. And Korea, all the other Asian countries are not far behind. So that's what we're looking at. A lot of times when Western literature is trying to understand changes in marriage, there's a trend of later and last marriage. Oftentimes the focus, the not necessarily measured and tested, but the values behind value changes are often at the center of the debates. Nevertheless, oftentimes such values are inferred using people's behavior or using ethnographic evidence based on people's self-report, which can be unreliable. And also we can't really establish causal inferences based on any of that kind of evidence. So for this specific research, I'm going to present a factorial survey experiment using the case of Japan. And the factorial survey experiment basically is to show people vignettes of what we do is we show people vignettes of a couple with and manipulate couple characteristics using that to understand what people prefer when they think about marriage, what people really, what's the normative judgment, when should people marry, and in what is the ideal marriage should look like in Japan. So that's what we are doing. So before I talk about our experiment, I just want to very briefly, I don't have a lot of time, I know that. So I want to very briefly talk about theories on values and marriage formation. So the Western view of this overall marriage change, a lot of it is based on Andrew Cherling's thesis on the deinstitutionalization of marriage. The idea is with rises in individualism, American marriage has moved from Gary Baker's idea of a role specialization model where husband and wives occupy different roles, sharp gender division of labor, to more individualistic type of marriage where the two parties negotiate and assume overlapping roles. And the second demographic transition framework is similar, basically arguing the decline in marriage has to do with rises in post-industrial values, making individuals value their own self-actualization, self-fulfillment, more than traditional institutional arrangement that marriage represents. So this institutionalization thesis or second demographic transition basically argues there's a dramatic and sweeping culture change, leading people see marriage and see relationship differently. Now, gender equity theories argues differently. It argues that the changes is mostly in the preferences among women. So with rises economic opportunities, the argument is that women see less gains from marriage. Therefore, their preferences for what makes a good, their idea for what makes a good marriage has changed. They no longer are satisfied with just the traditional gender division of labor. They're unhappy with, I think this is a very kind of popular argument in Korea too. They're unhappy with unequal family division of labor, and therefore they're opting out of marriage. So there's value changes in preferences among women. And then there's also Alan Thornton make this argument about developmental idealism. The idea is it's modern family change is a result of a sweeping fundamental culture shift that sees certain type of family as the ideal type, as a more modern and morally superior. Therefore, a small nuclear family become preferred. Small nuclear family with small number of children, very carefully timed in terms of when the child should be born. And that leads to postponement of childbearing and marriages associated with childbearing. So this will ultimately lead to postponement of marriage. So that's different ideas about how value plays a role behind the changes in the marriage trend. Now, specifically on the marriage decline in Japan, people have proposed several different explanations. Some of them more generally on East Asian marriage trend, some of them more specific on Japan, but basically the gist of it is a lot of time, one prominent explanation is the marriage decline has to do with changes, macroeconomic changes that lead men to become, to be less able to be a good family provider. So men's earning prospects have changed. So fewer men are able to have secure job and they can play the family provider role. The fundamental assumption there is there's still strong preference for traditional marriage, where, again, the role specialization marriage Gary Baker portrayed, where man is the breadwinner, women mainly take care of family. It's just because men are less likely to be able to assume their roles, so there are fewer people marrying. The second possibility is emphasize changes in women's economic conditions. So that's more along the line of gender equity theory. So women have more economic opportunity now, so they don't need to put up with unequal marriage where they have to shoulder most of the domestic responsibilities. So again, behind that, there's assumption women have certain preference, equal marriage. And then in Japan, with aging society, there's also argument about part of the reason women want to opt out of marriage is because they want to avoid elder care responsibilities, which in Japan, as well as in many East Asian countries, is still the responsibility of daughter-in-laws. It could be the responsibility of daughters as well, but daughter-in-laws also do a lot of elderly care. So marriage brings not just child care responsibility, but also elderly care responsibility. And in addition, I think this is more popular in Korea, probably even than Japan. With housing being so expensive, the inability to buy home also delay people's willingness to marry. And then, of course, with people wanting fewer children, there's an intention to delay childbearing. This is related to the developmental idealism. All that could lead to delay of marriage. Now, like I say, all this explanation implies some kind of different preferences for the conditions for marriage, but we don't really have rigorous causal evidence on people's preferences. What is the actual precondition? What is the most important precondition for marriage? How do we compare the different conditions? And do people actually share the same belief? Do all people believe the same thing? So that's what we set out to find out. Like I say, we're using a factorial survey experiment where we show people hypothetical scenarios of a couple of different characteristics. And we manipulate the couple characteristics and ask people whether they would suggest that they would endorse the couple's marriage. Specifically, we include 5 dimensions and 2 levels for each dimension in the vignettes. So basically in this couple, there's his job, her job, his parents' situation, whether the parents live close to him or far away, whether the man has a likelihood to buy home or not, has saving to buy a home or not, and whether she intend to have a child right away or wait until after age 35. So one unique thing we did in this specific vignette is we designed the man's job to be a conundrum. So we have the man's job to be promising, but also with very heavy time demand, which is more like a reality. So the job is very promising, but the man has to work overtime and go on business trips a lot, almost never home. Or the job can be unpromising, but the man will get home at 5 o'clock every day. So we're trying to see, facing if gender equality is so important, maybe even if women won't think the unpromising job is better than promising job, maybe they will be more conflicted than men do, at least. So that's the thought behind that. So let me say a little bit about the vignette. Okay, let me give you an example about the specific vignette. Sorry, I need to. Okay, the specific vignette. What we told them is your close friend is considering marrying her boyfriend. She's 28 years old and has been dating this man for 2 years. Below, we will describe her and her boyfriend's situation. Please review each case. We give each respondent 4 vignettes to review and tell us what advice you will give to her in each case. So in this example, we say she recently started working as a temporary employee at a cosmetics company. Her boyfriend is an office clerk at a small company, has no administrative title, and usually leaves work at 5 p.m. And then we give the annual income. Her boyfriend's parents live far away, but his married older sister lives near his parents. He currently rents his place and has no saving to buy a home. Also, she does not want to have a child until at least after age 35. As opposed to, this is another example, she is a full-time regular employee at a cosmetics company, working as a unit chief in the human resource department. Her boyfriend works for a major international company and was recently transferred to the headquarters, where he works as a team leader. Her boyfriend's job requires a lot of overtime work and frequent business trip, and then annual income. Her boyfriend's parents live with him, and he has a married older sister living far away. He has saved enough down payment to buy a large 1-bedroom apartment. So those are different scenarios, and we asked them, given that, would you advise this woman to marry her boyfriend right away, wait a few years to think about it, or better not to marry this boyfriend? So that's what we asked. So altogether, we inserted this group of questions in probability in a representative random representative sample of University Tokyo's online survey of people 24 to 43 years old. Altogether, we got 6,000 plus person vignette observation for the analysis. We use random effect model. When we use fixed effect model, the result basically the same. So, okay, finally, the results. Sorry for speaking so fast. I just feel like I'm gonna be out of time all the time. All right, so this is what we find in terms of the vignette characteristics. So the experimental condition. So each bar shows the effect on the level of endorsement for the couple's marriage. So we find that her job, whether her job is insecure or established, it makes absolutely no difference. Nobody cares. So his job, however, when his job is low income and low time demand, people are very negative. This is the most, in terms of magnitude and significance, this is the most negative effect, which means people strongly prefer the boyfriend who makes a lot of money and very busy. And then, of course, being far away from the parents is good, but not, if you look at the magnitude, it's not as important. It's about half as important as the man's job. Being able to buy home is good, but it's also about just half as important as the man's job. And then her intention to delay childbearing has some effect. When she want to delay, people think she should not marry. When she doesn't want to delay, people are more approving of the marriage, encouraging of the marriage. But the magnitude of the effect is relatively small compared to the other things. Okay, but you might wonder, are men and women different in this regard? So this shows how men and women are. So basically, for most of the experimental condition, there's a high consensus. Men and women are not statistically different. The only difference is here is when it comes to the men's job condition, women are even more likely than men to dismiss the boyfriend who has low income and low time demand, which means they're in favor of a boyfriend who has high income and high time demand, more so than men. So rather than what I expect based on gender equality theory, women really cares about whether men can have time to be involved in family life. Women actually, more than men, would think a man with higher income is better for marriage. In terms of respondent characteristic, mostly it doesn't really matter. So it doesn't really affect their view on marriage. And when we interact respondent characteristics with this most important factor, which is the boyfriend's job, the man's job, whether the man has a promising high demand job, what we find is, I already talked about women especially favor a man with high income and high time demand job. And people who are more with more education, with university education, also favor high income men to a greater extent than people have less education. In addition, people who tend to overwork, have long work hour, also favor men of high income to a greater extent. So basically, everybody, anyway. So, and then the other thing we look at is, does it matter what the woman has? So what that is to say, the preference for a man's job, does it depend on what the woman has? So this is looking at the effect of, so the gap here is the effect of the man's job is much greater when the woman has an unstable job. The effect of the man's job is smaller when the woman has a more established job. And also, more importantly, here what this shows is this dot is where both men and women in the couple have good jobs. The endorsement level is actually lower than when the woman has bad job and the man has good job. So the idea, the Western idea that the shift to a equal role, similar role marriage, where both men and women are supposed to have good job and that's the best condition to marry, it just doesn't show in Japan. In addition, but women having a good job is still meaningful. Here, what we find is when I interact the women's home owning status, whether the boyfriend, whether the boyfriend has a potential to buy a home or not, what we find is whether he has, so the blue line here is when he has a potential to buy a home. Of course, that's better than when he doesn't. But the difference is greater if the woman has a more established career path. If the woman's jobs are unstable, then basically having the boyfriend have the ability to buy a home is beneficial, but not as beneficial as when the woman has a good job. And our interpretation of that is respondents generally see that when a woman has a good job, she has more to she has more to offer. Therefore, for her, the man having a good home buying potential is especially important. When a woman has less to offer, that whether the man has additional, that's icing on the cake. It's not as important. Okay, so I talked about the men's jobs, the women's job, and home buying potential. They all have some kind of the interdependence effect. So the next thing we did is we divide all three, we interact all three things, creating a mutually exclusive scenario, looking at how respondents together consider the women's job and the men's job and whether the man can own home, how those things all depend on each other. And what we find, this is very interesting, that when the man, so this blue line is when the man has a good job and has the potential to own a home, at that point, basically the endorsement level for their marriage is really high. It really doesn't matter what the woman has. Whether she has an established job or an unstable job, doesn't matter. On the other hand, if the man has neither, no good job, no home buying potential, then nobody should marry them anyway. So it doesn't really matter what the woman, so that's the yellow line. It doesn't matter, nobody should marry them. So that's, and what's more tricky is the in-between situation. So this is also interesting that what we find here, the green line here is when the man has a good job, but no home buying potential, and when the woman have unstable job, the support for this the couple where the man has a good job but no home and the woman have bad job, is much higher than both of them have bad job, but the man can buy a home. Which is to say, most people think if both of them have bad jobs, being able to own a home is not enough. So home ownership itself, it doesn't compensate for lack of good job. However, if the woman has a good job, then home ownership per se would be okay. Or if there's no home, but the man can buy, has a good job, that would also be okay. So there need to be some way of supporting the family. So that's what I'm showing here. I don't really have a lot of time. I have other interactions that we have done, and I could talk about it if we have time at Q&A, but I just want to quickly talk about this specific additional findings where we look at in the home buying potential interacting with where the in-law live. So I've talked about basically when it comes to a woman's marriage, the respondents generally would endorse the marriage more if the in-law lives far away. So the idea that having in-laws nearby and can help with childcare, there's no such thing. Everybody thinks the in-law just should live as far away as possible. But what's interesting in this interaction is what we find is when in-law lives, so the red line here is when the in-law lives far away. So when the in-law lives far away, of course, a man with home buying potential is more preferred than a man without home buying potential. But it's even more important when the in-law lives close by. When the in-law lives close by, which in the Vignette, basically they're currently living with the single boyfriend. If the boyfriend cannot buy home, then the support for the woman's marriage to him is really low. So to me, what our interpretation is, what this shows is when people think about whether they have in-law live close by or far away, it's really not so much about whether they will have to take care of them in the future, because that's still far away from now. What they really care about is if the man cannot buy a house, then the in-law live far away means they may have to live with the in-law, and that's a big problem. If the in-law lives far away, then it's less an issue. Not having a house, it's less a problem. Okay. I'm at 24 minutes something, so I'm gonna wrap it up. All right, so what do we find here? So for the first thing we find is the male partners, at least in Japan, the male partners' career prospects, even at the expense of the family involvement, is still viewed as the fundamental condition for marriage more than any other things. And we find relatively little support of the kind of a new individualistic marriage where both partners' economic roles are considered important. We also find relatively little support for gender equality theory because we didn't find women in any way more conflicted when facing the choice between having a man who makes a lot of money or having a man who's available at home. Okay, and then we do find that women having some economic potential is considered a good thing. It can be helpful, but the ultimate ideal is still for men to be the breadwinner. I just want to say one more thing. There's some discussion I don't have time to talk about, but the other thing important from the policy implication from this research to me is that what we show is if men's earnings ultimately is considered more important than whether they are able to be home, then all the policies trying to change the workplace and make men available, more capable of involving family life is not going to make a difference because that's not what people are aiming for. Even though that by itself is a beneficial thing, it could improve gender equality, worker well-being, that has a lot of benefit, but it's not going to promote marriage. And in addition, we also find that having a home is important, but it's not nearly as important when the man doesn't have a good job. Just having ability to buy a home is not enough to persuade a woman to marry them, or at least most people think so. Therefore, I know in Korea, in Taiwan, there has been a lot, government has been trying to promote marriage through providing subsidies, incentives to help people buy a house, all those things. But if a good long-term job is not there, home ownership or even just short-term subsidy by itself, it's just not going to promote marriage. I'm going to stop here. We can talk about any additional things. Anybody interested? I can talk in more detail about my results and other things too.
Professor Lee, you are muted.
So
Thank you, Professor Yu. And it was very interesting study. And I kept wondering about what we would find if we do similar study in Korea. So I think it has a lot of implications for Korea's marriage market situation too. Uh, so let's see. I think we would like to entertain one or two quick questions. And this time, I also would like to invite any audience who might have a question. Raise your hand, show that little mark, and then we'll give you opportunity to ask question. If not, we'll go back to our two panelists, see if we have any questions.
So
Okay.
if no one asks questions, I'm gonna ask one question. So thank you for the great talk, and I thought your findings makes perfect sense in the Korean context as well, because economic stability is important for many things, including child rearing, and also the fact that men has time doesn't guarantee that he will be involved in family work. So I thought this is a very understandable findings. But I was wondering about the variable which you considered for geographic proximity of parents parents-in-law, because in Korea, parents also provide help in child rearing. So sometimes they're considered as resources rather than sources of dependence. So have you considered that factor in your study? And if you have, could you please talk a little bit more about it? Thank you.
Thank you.
By the way, we have one question from our audience, Kyla Im. If you have question, we'll have your question and have Professor Yu probably give answer to two questions.
Okay, thank you so much. My name's Kylie. I'm a PhD student at UT Austin, but I did my undergrad and master's here at Seoul National. So, first of all, thank you so much for sharing such a wonderful study. I did have the similar thought that Professor Lee shared. I was like, during the talk, I was wondering what would the findings be if you did the same research in Korea. And I was also wondering if you have any intention to actually do the study in the Korean context. And so my question was, do you have any expectations about like potential findings if you conducted similar research in here, Korea, especially regarding the gender differences? Because to me, it was really surprising. I was really surprised to find like small gender differences among the responses. And I do assume that it would be different in the Korean context where gender conflict is pretty much more pronounced among the four East Asian societies. And so it would be wonderful if you could share, based on your knowledge about East Asian societies, what you think you will find if you did the same study in Korea. Thank you.
Great. So now we will come to Professor Yu.
Thank you. I do have the intention to work to do the study in Korea. I am actually in the process. I'm waiting to hear whether I get money. I sent a proposal to a couple places. I'm hoping to get money too, so I can conduct the study in Korea because I do think it wouldn't be completely the same. My sense is that my sense of Japan is there's still the male breadwinner models is more idealized, if not completely, but more idealized probably than in Korea. So I would imagine there might be something. With regard to the household work situation, we didn't want to make it too obvious. We didn't want to say the boyfriend is, willing to do housework or not, because I just think it's very unrealistic and it becomes very morally loaded. Then everybody feel like they should choose the one who cares about gender equality. That's why we designed the situation to be whether he's available or not. The idea, of course, some people may say, just being available doesn't mean they will do anything. They may just stay at home. But in reality, having a husband available when it comes to childcare still makes a huge difference because that just means that you don't need to be single mom all the time. You don't need to be the one picking up the kid, even if the husband doesn't do that much housework. And realistic, I mean, empirical research does show that when the husband work fewer hours, they do a bit more, even in Japan. Not equal, but more housework than husbands who are not around. Because if you are not around, you cannot do anything. It's also issue of quality of relationship. Because if you have a husband who will never be home, that also means the couple will never spend time together. So it's not gonna be it's gonna be a very transactional, very functional, economically, I don't know, gainful marriage, but it doesn't really help in terms of a couple relationship or more modern idea of a relationship. So I still think even if the husband would not do very much, it still make a difference whether they are home or not. They have to work all the time or not. So the result showing that women actually don't care about that more than men do. Actually, the other way around, women are even more than men wanted a man who's very, very busy but makes a lot of money, which I find kind of surprising. I would think maybe in Korea it would be less so. I don't know for sure. I need to get money and do the study. So in terms of parent-in-law, I agree that parents or parents-in-law could be resource for childcare, and that's the situation in Taiwan in Chinese society. So when we set this out, we thought it could go the other, one way or the other. So we were kind of surprised that in Japan there's absolutely no interest. In fact, if I can show one slide I didn't get to show, let me see. The slide I didn't show is here. Wait, current in-law personality. No, this one. In fact, what we find is if they think the woman will have a child soon, they particularly don't want the in-law to be nearby. So in-law being far, in-law being close is particular. Let me see. In-law being far away is particularly beneficial if if they may have a child very soon. So that is to say, when they think about if you don't have a child, then it doesn't matter whether the in-law is nearby. If you have a child, you really don't want the in-laws to be nearby because the in-laws can interfere with your family life a lot more because they will be more involved because they're interested in the grandchild. So there's gonna be more interaction. So that's my interpretation of this. So instead of seeing in-laws as resources, we didn't look at the women's parents because we just, there's a limit. There's so many things to ask. We can't ask everything. So we only look at the husband, the potential husband's parents, because originally we're thinking about it in terms of elderly care responsibilities. But as it turns out, people are not thinking that much, or they really just don't want the interference from the parents-in-law. So that's my interpretation.
Okay, great, Professor Yu. I really hope that you will be able to do a similar study in Korea. And when you do, and if you need any local collaborator, please let us know. That will be great.
Thank you.
Okay,
Can I ask
so
just a very simple
sure.
question? Yeah. So it was a very interesting and fantastic talk. I really enjoyed it, and it's good to see that you're collaborating with your colleagues at NTU. And so our department has this annual exchange between our department and NTU sociology department almost every year, professors and undergrad students. By the way, okay, so I think like preference for men with stable and high income jobs. I think that is definitely a kind of like pragmatic considerations, and also cultural kind of expectations are kind of mixed regards to such preferences. And one way you can probably consider is to see if there's kind of differences in individuals' responses across different like regions or places of where the respondents are living in Japan. So for example, if they are living in like big metropolitan areas where housing prices are expensive, then their preference for guys who are making a lot of money would matter more compared to regions in Japan where housing prices are relatively low. So by looking at those differences, maybe, I don't know, just a like quick rough idea, maybe you can differentiate between the pragmatic concerns and cultural expectations. Okay, I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's a good idea. Thanks.
Okay, great. Now we are going to turn to the third paper, which actually deals with population change and politics. So now I'd like to introduce our third presenter, Yao Lu. She's a professor of sociology at Columbia University, and her paper's title is Age Structure and Democracy. So I'd like to welcome Professor Lu, and
Thank you very much.
And thank you for accommodating. Oh, yeah.
oh, sure,
Request.
no problem. Thank you for joining us.
Have a good night.
Bye.
See you
Take good
later.
care, everyone.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
고생하셨습니다.
네.